So I showed a game to my son. His reaction? Dad, this game is boring. But then something unexpected happened. Hi, my name is Rickard, and welcome to my channel and a new episode about Agile Game Development with Python and Pygame. In the previous episode, we worked on getting the game loop set up and drew a basic animation on the screen. This is what's the game now, and this is what I showed to my son. No wonder he didn't like the game. He tried to interact with the circle, he grabbed the mouse and clicked, but nothing happened. So I asked him, what would you like to do with the circle? Then he started talking about the circle being a balloon and that you could shoot down the balloon with some arrows. I think we have an idea for a game now. So it looks like this agile idea of early feedback actually might work. All of a sudden, we have a game idea that our customer wants. In today's video, you will see me make small progress towards a balloon shooter game. So you will see me refactoring the code to accommodate new game objects and new concepts that we have now that we know that we're going to do a balloon shooter. And we will also add the arrow, draw the arrow, which we will eventually be able to shoot at balloons. This episode is also available as a blog post, so check out the link in the description for that. Let's get into it. So right now, our game consists of this circle moving back and forth, just an animation. And we want to evolve this towards a balloon shooter. So let's see if we can extract the logic from this circle and make that into a balloon. So we have some logic here for animating the circle and drawing it. So let's see if we can first extract this to a new object called a balloon. So let's first create a class. And let me also run the tests. So at this point, this is just a refactoring, so we can rely on the test we have. So let's instantiate a balloon here in our game. Still works. Let's see if we can move this x variable into the balloon. So we'll move it down here. That should break some things. Game object has no attribute x. Right. So instead of doing self.x, let's do self.balloon. Balloon.x. And I believe that should work. Game has no attribute balloon. Because I cannot spell. Let's fix it. There we go. Back to green. So what else? This is like updating the position of the balloon. So let's see if we can move that into the balloon class itself and do self.balloon.tick, passing the delta time. And self.balloon now becomes a self. Still works. All right. And then we have this part, which is drawing it. So let's extract that to another one method. Draw, and we need to pass the loop, I guess. And self.loop just becomes loop, self balloon becomes self, Oh, test failure. Name loop is not defined. Name loop is not defined. Right, because we're supposed to do self.loop here. Let's also try it out. Make sure we haven't broken anything. Still animates as we expect. I think in a previous episode I talked about not fully testing the animation of the circle. And I mentioned that I thought that code would be easier to test if the code was in a lower level object. And now it is. So now we can write more specific tests for this balloon, how it animates, without having to be concerned with like matching the draw event. We can just assert on the x-coordinate of the balloon and call the tick method in a test. I don't think we're going to do that just yet, but when the time comes to add some more behavior to the balloon, this is for sure where we will test it. Next, I think I want to add an arrow object to actually draw an arrow on the screen as well. I also want to have a look at this test. So I draw an animated circle until the user closes the window. So I think I want to change this test. So the game is no longer supposed to draw an animated circle, but it's supposed to draw the initial scene of the game. So let's try to write I draw the initial scene of the game, which consists of a balloon and an arrow. So that's the description. Are we actually doing that? To draw an initial scene of the game and quit when the user closes the window. So we don't want to test the animation at this level now. So we can remove one set of events here to just test the initial scene. And then we can test the animation in the lower level objects later on. But right now, we don't really care about testing the animation. So let's remove one level of events. Now we'll get a test failure saying that we're not getting this second part, which was expected. So let's remove that. So now the first draw circle is going to be the balloon. And the next thing we want to have here is the arrow. So let's draw the arrow at x, I don't know, 10. And that fails. So let's just do the quickest possible thing here. So let's say self.loop.draw circle at 10. Test pass. Okay. So now I want to refactor this to extract the arrow object. So let's do something similar to this. Fails, saying arrow is not defined. So let's go ahead and define it. And I want to have a draw method that does this. And now we can do self.arrow draw, self.loop. That should work. And for every kind of object that we're adding to our game, the pattern is going to be, first we call the tick method to update the state of this object, and then we draw all the objects. So I want to put all the objects in a list, and then we can just loop over them here instead of having the names of all of them. So this code will be for, and I'll call them sprite, because sprite seems common Pygame terminology for an object that is shown on the screen. I'll just start with this and do sprite.draw. That should pass. And I want to do the same for the tick. But this will not yet work because there's no tick method of the arrow. So let's add that as well. And do nothing. Because the arrow doesn't have any movement or any state yet, just draws. And now instead of having this, we can define our sprites to be and just replace this list with it should work. So let's have a look at what this actually looks like. So now we have the animated circle, which is our balloon. It still animates as before. And then we have the arrow, which is drawn up here. So one thing that I'm thinking of with this sprite refactoring is that maybe this drawing code should move into the game loop. Maybe this whole logic should move into the game loop. So the responsibility of the game is just to provide the loop with the list of sprites and just modify that list to add and remove objects and modify their properties to make them animate or whatever. I'm not quite sure yet that's a good idea, so I will leave it like this. So if we have a look at the game again, this to me doesn't look like a balloon or an arrow. And to make this a little bit more real, I would like to draw the arrow down here, somewhere in the middle of the screen, pointing up towards the balloon. And we said we were just going to use circles for graphics, but what if we modify this draw circle method so it would accept both an x and a y coordinate and maybe a radius as well, so we can make smaller circles for the arrow and perhaps a color as well. So let's have a look at the draw circle, which is in the game loop. So right now the color, the y-coordinate and the radius are hard-coded. So let's begin with the refactoring. Oh, I should run the tests. Let's begin with extracting them to parameters, say y, and default them to whatever we have. So y50 should work the same. And radius, I believe this is the radius, at least. I have to check out the Pygame documentation. Oops. Color, red. So this will probably not affect the test because we haven't changed the event. And this method is actually not tested, because if we're going to test this, we need to draw something on the screen and visually inspect that it looks correct. How about we add all the arguments to this event, or let's just start with a y coordinate. Now some tests will start failing, and let's fix those. So this is our game test. It's asserting that two circles are drawn. The first one at x50 and the second one at x10. But they're both drawn at y50. So let's add that. And let's add the radius as well. We'll fail in the same way. Radius 40. And let's do the same for the color. Alright, so now let's just also visually inspect that it still looks okay. Looks okay to me. So now we can start improving on this a bit. So the first part here is the balloon. I'm fine with that. But I want to change how the arrow is drawn. So I want to draw this first of all with a smaller radius. So maybe let's do 20. And I also want to do it lower down and towards the middle of the screen. So let's say 500x and 500y. And let's make it blue. And I'm not running tests. Lots of errors, so let's see if we can fix that. So arrow should draw at x 500, oops, y 500, color should be blue, and radius should be 20. Test pass, let's have a look. Alright, so we have our arrow down here, and we have the balloon up there. So I want to draw a couple of circles for the arrow to indicate some kind of direction. It doesn't yet have a direction, but this is just about the visuals. So I want to draw maybe three circles in a row to indicate the direction. And maybe I want to do smaller and smaller circles to indicate also the direction of the arrow, not just so you know where the tip of the arrow is. So let's do 3 circles. And this is one part where like testing this for a game is not maybe the best, Because here we're asserting that, yeah, we're drawing circles at different coordinates. But how do we know that these are the correct values? Well, we know these are the correct values if it looks good on screen. So the assertion should really be, it draws three circles, it draws a number of circles that make it look like an arrow on screen. And that assertion is difficult to write because you have to visually inspect it and see if it looks good or not. So perhaps we can relax these assertions and just say it draws three circles and ignore the attributes. But let's ignore that for now and say we add two more. I'm just gonna visually inspect this now, and then we adjust the test to assert on what we think looks good. So let's have the first one be the top circle, so it should be the smallest one, indicating the tip. So let's do, I don't know, 15, and then 18, 20, and then let's move each one down. So let's do 5, 10, 5, 20. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe looks okay. I think it will look better if we spread them more apart. So let's do 5, 25, 40. And maybe the radius, there should be a bigger difference in radius. So let's do 10. Oops. Let's do 10. 15, 20, and I think maybe this top one, the middle one should move a bit up, maybe. So let's do 15. Didn't look that good. Maybe this looks good enough. So if you squint, you can imagine that this is an arrow pointing in a certain direction. So if we were to fire this now, it will go straight up. I think this is good enough for now. So let's have a look at the tests, which will fail now. So draw circle. The first one should be radius 10. Second one, radius 15 at y 520, and the third one, 540 at radius 20. There we go. There's one final thing I would like to do, and that's to rename game. We now know what kind of game we're working on. It's no longer a generic game. So let's reflect that by calling it Balloon Shooter. I don't know about you, but when I start the game now, all I want to do is press a button to fire that arrow so it hits the balloon. So probably that's what we'll be working on in the next episode. See you then.